All right, today we are starting a new project. It's a Pontiac 326. We're gonna go through the whole deal. It's gonna get some nice pistons. We're gonna do a little head work. Stay tuned and we'll get into it. All right, so we got it in line home. We just deburred the caps, put the caps back on, torqued them, and set up the bore gauge, which is over here. Hang on. So, and I noticed on these Pontiacs, you know, the main bores obviously were honed at the factory, whereas some engines, they just line bored them and they were never honed. And the hone looks beautiful, but the caps, especially like 2 and 3 and maybe even 4, when you measure it, it's like the cap's leaning like this, so it's tighter in the back than it is the front, but all of them are too big. So 0 on the gauge, 0 is the minimum dimension, and that's like just a little over 1 over the minimum, which is at the very top of the tolerance. But some of them, like that one's a thousandths and a couple of tenths. But if you check the back side, see it's, get in there. Got an oil hole in the way. So that's like almost 2 thousandths over. So the second cap, I said it was leaning backwards. It's actually leaning forward. So, and several of them's like that. And these Pontiacs are dial pinned. And I know when I lapped the caps, it was really heavy on the outside and really light on the inside. So I'm gonna just pull all the caps, cut them, and get us some room, and then we're just gonna line hone it back to standard. And once we get that process done, then we can get it decked and be ready to bore it. But let me get the caps off, and I'm gonna get them cut, and then I'll bring you back when we start honing. All right, so I cut the caps, and I went ahead and stroked it a little bit. It's even the block, it's not flat, so just time and hot and cold. But the back cap is super wide, and it was actually like twisted, so it's a mess. And a couple of the middle ones are still a mess, and when I cut them, you could see that the bottom wasn't parallel with the side. So, but again, it wasn't, it wasn't parallel with the bore either. So how they got like that, I don't really know. But we only cut like 2.5 or 3 off of them. So we're probably gonna have to cut another 2 to get there, because some of them are like at 0 on one side now and a little big on the other side. So we just gonna have to cut them again to get there. So in the morning, it's late, we fixing to go home, but in the morning I'm gonna whack them one more time, and then I feel confident we can get it brought in then. But I probably had to take, I don't know, probably almost 1,000ths out of it to get the actual block to be straight. So now all we gotta do is just work the caps in. But again, a lot of these stuff, we see it with like small block Fords too. These thin castings, they just, man, over 30, 40 years, man, they just move around. And once, they just go through all that thermal cycling and you got wore out bearings, it's fine, it works. But you put a fresh crank and fresh bearings in there, and the block's all twisted up, it's just don't work good. So, all right. So here's a good example. So you can see it's pretty much cleaned up that hole number 1. There's just a little edge right here that hasn't cleaned up. But over here on number 3, and I'm gonna move it out of the way just so it's cleaned up the whole block, but it hasn't even touched the cap. I mean, it hasn't touched anything in that cap. And all of these were measured, like I measured the depth of each cap when we cut them, and every cap is exactly the same depth. So obviously the block was high in the center. So it's like, you know, it's like this, the whole block. So that's just, this is probably the worst one I've seen that didn't even touch the center main. That's crazy. But anyway, but I just, as I was pulling them off, because I'm fixing to cut all the caps again, as I was pulling them off, I just happened to notice that one didn't even touch. So that was pretty unique. All right, I'm gonna go cut them and then we'll be back to do some more line honing. So we still got about 1.5 thousandths to go on all of them but this one. And this one is already to size. And so I'm gonna cut this one again by itself and then get it closer to these. So obviously the block was down or up here also for that to work out that way, because from the parting line to the inside, every one of these caps were the same height when I cut them. Even the second time, they were still all the same height. So I'm gonna just trim that one a couple of more thousandths. Oh yeah, that's better. Yeah, we can work with that. I'm gonna flip it around and go from the other side a little bit. I always try to hone from both sides just to help with any deviation that may or may not occur. So this one, which was the one that never touched, it's pretty much on size, and the other four are like almost 1,000ths to go. So I'm gonna clip this cap just a little bit because this obviously is tall too. Yeah, this one here is probably the worst one I've seen in a while. I mean, I've had some bad ones, but this one is definitely ranking up there with them. Yeah, you can see we got a little shadow right here. So that's where it's big right there, and it's on size here and it's big here. So I think we probably trim 1,000ths off of it and be able to bring it in. But like I say, the rest of them look good, just this one's a little bit big. Maybe in that shadow it's still just like a tenth or two small, so it may take a pinch more. Alright, so the junky GoPro took a dump again. I swear, them things is just garbage. I got to come up with something other than a GoPro, because we done bought 3 brand new ones and they won't run more than 15 minutes without running hot. So anyway, I was in the middle of all this and we had a cap or two that we had to cut. I ain't looked at all the footage, so I'm just gonna go over it. So we had, to start with, the thrust was still a little big, so we trimmed it another thousandths just by itself. And we got it in, and then this one was just like a little bit, it had a little shadow in the kind of over about 3 o'clock, so we trimmed it again. And now this cap is 0, and these are all just a couple of tenths above 0. So it's all square and straight and happy, and I'm satisfied. I think we ended up taking about 4.5 or 5 off the caps total. So, you know, people seem to be obsessed about moving the crank center line. So worst case, we moved the crank 2.5 thousandths. So I'd rather have the crank moved 2.5 thousandths than, you know, a 4-lane highway for the cam tunnel, for the main tunnel. And that explains why the crank and the bearings were just absolutely destroyed. I mean, it looked like you've been running 0W rocks and gravel through it. So they was all scratched up and trashy, and that makes perfect sense, because as bad as the tunnel was, and then the size was all big too. So that's that. But now that we got the mains done, we're gonna get it decked. I got to get the final deck height. And what we're gonna do, these 326s are really similar in bore size to a 5.3 LS. So what we're gonna do is have a piston built for this application in a 5.3 bore and use metric 5.3 rings, and so we can just, you know, get rid of all that massive ring tension and radial thickness. And this thing is gonna get one of our roller cams. It's gonna get Holley EFI, and so it's gonna be a really nice build. And I think it's an all original car, even original owner of the car. So it's gonna, you know, it's gonna be a nice little deal. But anyway, so that's the first operation, first episode out of the way, and there'll be some more shortly, because we're gonna try to get this thing knocked out here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I hope. Thank you for watching. If you need anything, PowellMachineInc.com. We'll see you on the next one.